Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to be back here once again, and many of your drafts has started. I'm here along with Jed and over in Chicago, Jimmy over in Arizona, and today I'm actually in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the home of the Gerald Ford Presidential Museum. So, welcome, everyone.
Morning.
Hey, did any of you guys watch the game yesterday? So a couple of things. Jameis Winston did outstanding. Marquise Callaway just had that nice catch. Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville's offense really struggled. And a couple of other things. I love your comments on it. What do you call it? Oh, here we go. Travis Etienne has been diagnosed with a mid-foot sprain after yesterday's preseason loss and now will be out indefinitely. Adam Troutman, sleeper for tight end, will undergo an MRI after suffering an ankle injury. Thoughts on that? Let me begin with Jed.
Yeah, I think the Travis Etienne one is a huge one. We just finished our draft. Whoever had James Robinson just got a steal. I mean, he is going to be the number one back for. We'll have to see how long the sprain is for Etienne. But I liked Robinson all along, and they've been saying he's still. Urban Meyer's been saying that he is still the starter. So it's not a huge thing, but still, if you got James Robinson, you're going to see his draft stock shoot up now. So he's going to cost a lot more. Or if you're in a league where people aren't paying attention to the news, make sure you get a hold of James Robinson because that'll be a steal.
Yep. Jim, any thoughts?
No, I agree with you. Actually, so I was high on Etienne, and I actually drafted him on one of my leagues. And so I was like, yeah, it's time to put him on. My guess is he'll be out for a few weeks, so he's going to be on IR. I actually did, funny enough, also pick up Marquise Callaway, or I drafted him towards the end of the 10th round for me. And I actually think that with Michael Thomas out, and now potentially Adam Troutman, I like Callaway. I think he's actually going to be a decent fantasy player this year.
Got it. Very good. Hey, in terms of James Winston, Jim, what'd you think of him yesterday in terms of how well he did?
Actually, I was surprised. I mean, I guess from a fantasy perspective, you always want a Jameis Winston, but I was surprised that he did so well. And even as I was watching the game, they were speculating that he at least now has the leg up in terms of being the starting quarterback, when in fact, most of the training camp, everyone was saying Taysom Hill was going to be the guy because they didn't think that Sean Payton was going to put up with Winston and his interceptions. But it seems like, at least from yesterday's game, he at least has a leg up on that.
If you guys were listening last week and this whole summer, actually, we've been talking about, it's got to be Winston. Winston is so much better than Taysom Hill as an every down passer. To me, it's a no-brainer. But remember that they promised Taysom Hill that he would get the starting role when Drew Brees retired. So that's the tricky part. But to me, in terms of talent, there's no question. And I think last night really showed that.
Yeah. Hey, the other day, Ed, you mentioned that the three of us finished our draft, and hey, any thoughts from the draft? I think the big one was when Jimmy was trying to bid me for Aaron Rodgers, and he just completely increased the pricing to the point where now he's stuck with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's a good tale, cautionary tale. So basically, I think Jimmy was trying to get Tommy to spend a little bit more money, and it was working and it was going up. But then he went one step too far and ended up with two quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so here's my thing, right? Because I was like, well, I do hope that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a great year from a fantasy perspective. I also have Justin Herbert. So at least for me, I was like, I got assets to trade down the road. The problem with that is by the time I spent all my money with Aaron Rodgers, I had no more money left. And so you're kind of stuck until the end of the draft when you just pick up people for $1. And that's the frustrating part, is because there were a number of players that went after that went really cheap, but there was no way for me to bid on it, even though I wanted them.
Yeah, that's it. But I agree with you. And the funny thing about fantasy is we're laughing about this now, but watch Aaron Rodgers win you the league. He could have a great season, and that could be the move that wins it for you. So it's not, definitely not everything is lost. But it was a fun draft. I mean, overall, I thought so this was our keeper draft. left when we did an auction for just the remainers. So it means that, everyone gets the whole 5 players. And so what happens is the players that are left, boy, there's just a feeding frenzy. All the bidding costs were about double what the average, costs were for normal drafts, because everyone's just fighting for essentially the leftovers.
Well, look at Jimmy with his Najee Harris. That was the first one. He bid at $93 for it. I'm sorry, $93 for Najee Harris. I quit after $89, $90.
No, I thought that was good, though. I mean, you got to, because he had to shore up his running back position, and there was very few what I would consider top 10 running backs. I think Najee Harris, and then who was the other one? There was one other.
I think
Chris Carson. That's right, the guy I dropped. Yeah, Chris Carson was the other one that basically you're fighting between those guys, and then the rookies. So Etienne was out there, and so, but I think in those kind of keeper drafts, you have to identify one position that in your mind you have to get a starter for that position, and then everything else is just gravy.
Yeah. Well, usually, at least with my strategy for a lot of these drafts, I'll let people bid high on the first round of running backs, right? And some of the first round of players. I'll usually go high on wide receivers and potentially tight ends. And then I'll try to fill in my team with a lot of really valued players. But this one is a little bit different because I decided I'm going to spend I was willing to spend $100 on a good running back and try to go after 2 or 3 really, really good players and fill in the rest of it later on. So,
yeah. Hey, one thing that actually has helped me a lot of times is when you're drafting, especially in auction league, Yahoo allows you to see positions grid and allows you to see who drafted what. And so that allowed me to really look at Aaron Rodgers. Wait a minute. I'm the only one without a quarterback. Everyone else has a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is there, and Ryan Tannehill is there. So if I lose Aaron Rodgers, I probably will be stuck with Ryan Tannehill. Let's do that and go figure out trade another day as well too. So that was the one. So that helps you a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to that one. I was paying attention to trying to up Aaron Rodgers.
Well, hey, look, let's go over to the AFC East as well as the NFC North for this time. And so a lot of times, let's begin with the Bills as well, too. Everyone knows that Josh Allen is your number 2 quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes. Jim, I'll start with you. Any concern about Josh Allen? It's not that he's good. Everyone knows he's good. Is there any concern where you would not want to pick up?
No, I don't think so. I remember this time last year, we were all drafting Josh Allen towards like the end of the draft, and you were able to get him for a really, really good value. Now he's going second in most of these drafts, which I think is pretty good, but it's still pretty high as well too. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Stefan Dix, I think, is going to get his catches and make fantasy. The more of the question for me will be how well will Zack Moss do, as well as also Devin Singletary. Because there seems to be a mixed group of people that says that this Moss is going to break out and be the number 1 back. And there are some people who just believe that it's going to be a shared running back committee system.
Yeah, I would agree on your thoughts there. I mean, I think the main thing with any high flyer, and I think just in general, everyone should remember there's this term called regression to the mean if you're into stats, which basically means that you have an average and you are always going to kind of head towards the average. And so I think with Josh Allen, you got to say the issue is we don't know what his average is. And so he had a great season, but I think you have to keep your expectations in check. I think he's a top 5 quarterback. Is he going to be the number 1 QB again? I doubt it. I doubt that, the Bills took some teams by surprise last year. That's not going to happen this year. And so you should expect a little bit of a drop, but still in the top 5. If that's part of your strategy, I would have no problems getting him.
Yeah. The concern always has been with Josh Allen isn't that he could run. A lot of times that running ability is what makes him great. It's the accuracy as well, too. Now, I think the presence of Stefan Dix really helped. Jed, I'm going to throw it over to you. Stefan Dix, if I was to say to you, Stefan Diggs is overrated as a wide receiver. I don't understand why people are drafting him in the first round. Am I crazy, or do I actually have some legitimacy in what I'm saying?
Um, well, I wouldn't say overrated. If anything, I would say underrated. I think that,
Really? Okay.
yeah, especially going out to Buffalo, I think you don't have as much of the media coverage, and then when he was in Minnesota as well, so I don't think he gets as much press as the Devontae Adams of the world, even the Michael Thomases of the world. So I think no, I don't think he's overvalued. I think he's definitely in the top three. But like I said, I think there's going to be a drop off. So first round, I would say if you're going to pick a wide receiver in the first round, to me, other than Devontae Adams, I really don't think there is anyone I would consider in round one. Round two, no problem at all. Go for it.
Got it.
No, I actually agree with you. I mean, outside Devontae Adams, I mean, really, Travis Kelce is the next person you want to go after in your first round.
Yeah. Jim, if you had the chance between Devin Singletary or Zach Moss, who would you pick?
I just think Moss has the higher ceiling and the higher potential in terms of being able to be the number one back. There were a couple of games last year he did tremendously in. I just wish that they would say he's going to be the number one back and not the shared running back system that they're going after.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is the way of the NFL right now. Everyone knows running backs, they're interchangeable, and so there's more two-man committees. Basically, the thing with Moss is he's the goal line back, so he gets the goal line carry. So even if it's an even split, he's the guy who can help break that tie with those TD points.
If you are in 12 team league, a lot of times you might want to look at Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, and if you're really desperate, tight end Dawson Knox. If you're a 10-person league, you're not paying attention to any of these guys as well too. All right, Patriots. Let's go over the Patriots as well too.
Let me add one thing. So going back to the Bills, I know a lot of people don't have defensive players, but I will say from a fantasy perspective, the Bills have some great defensive players that you might want to pick up. Matt Milano, linebacker, Jordan Poyer, who's a defensive cornerback, and then also Taron Johnson. Like they always are pretty consistent from an IDP perspective. So
that defense is going to be awesome. That defense was awesome last season. It's going to be top 5 again this season. So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Let's switch over to Patriots. Jed, I'm going to go over to you. Cam Newton, Mac Jones, any of them are on your radar as a starting QB?
Not as a starter. I think Cam actually played. Actually, they both played really well in their last preseason game. But I wouldn't pick either of them as my starter. But Mac Jones, if you wanted to look longer term, I wouldn't have a problem there. I expect Mac Jones to have the starting position by the end of the season. When they make that switch, I'm not sure. But I wouldn't pick either of those guys as a starting quarterback. As a backup, I think they'd be fine.
Got it. Hey, Jed, quick question on Cam Newton. A lot of times he says, okay, COVID affected me. It's my first season, New England. I have a year under my belt. Watch me. Any belief in that? Do you think
Yeah, I do think he's trending up. I mean, I think you have to remember last year they had no pass catchers. They're looking at Jacoby Myers or Nikhil Harris as like their number one wide receivers. Those are really poor options. And now adding in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I think the passing offense is really going to improve this year. So I see him getting better and having better stats for sure, but not to the point of being a top 10 quarterback.
Jim, in terms of running back, Damian Harris, Sony Michel, who's your running back to own?
Well, I think there was some reports that Sony Michel might be dropped from the team before they head into the final roster. So that's something for us to watch. But I do think Damian Harris is on the verge of breaking out this year. And I actually think that he's actually a good value from a running back perspective.
Now, the argument a lot of times is Bill Belichick never gives the primary ball to a primary carrier. It's always been by committee. Burkhead, Sony Michel, James White, all of these different things. Damian Harris, would you say differently, or would you still see him more as a committee person?
I think Belichick is always going to go for a committee, but I do think Harris is the best one out of that group. That's one of the reasons why I think if Mac Jones becomes the fantasy, the value of both Harris, Jonnu Smith, and actually even if you think about Jacoby Myers, I actually think that they'll rise if Mac Jones becomes the starting quarterback for them.
I thought you were going to bring up Nelson Aguilar, Jimmy. I know you
Oh
were
no,
talking about him as a sleeper, as an
I
outside
love him.
wide receiver. Yeah, it's an interesting sleeper. I do think this wide receiver core. I don't know that I would really draft any of these guys, to be very honest. I think if you do, you want to look in the very late rounds. But somebody should pop from this group. Someone should come out. It's just not clear who. But don't forget Nelson Aguilar. He's got that outside speed, so not a bad pick.
But Jay, you would probably agree it's the tight ends that you want to own. You want to own Hunter Henry, you want to own Jonnu Smith. In all my leagues, look, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, all of those great kiddos are gone. Then from that point on, Hawkinson is gone. Then from that point on, Logan Thomas is gone. Out that last tier, you can't go wrong with Jonnu Smith or Irv Smith.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith are great picks as a sleeper. I think either of them could sneak into the 10th spot, 9th tight end spot, so you could get them very cheap. And again, we all know the history with New England and tight ends, so expect some production there. It's just a question of who, and then the injury concern. Both Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry have not had full 16 game seasons in quite a while, so that's the other concern.
I was listening to ESPN driving into the office this morning, and I was surprised the two people that they've been pushing is they said Jonnu Smith and Logan Thomas from Washington is going to have a breakout season.
I totally agree.
I was fighting Tommy for Logan Thomas. I already had Kyle Pitts, so he was my number 2, and so that's why I was gun shy. But I totally agree. Yep. If there's anyone to go all in on at the tight end position, for me, it's Logan Thomas. I think a great strategy is wait, let everyone else spend their money on the other top 5, top 6 tight ends, and then when Logan Thomas comes in, you're going to get him for maybe $30, and he's going to produce at like a $50-$60 tight end.
Matthew Berry was saying that he would draft Logan Thomas above Kyle Pitts, which I think is pretty crazy, right? Because I like Logan Thomas. I don't like him that much,
See, I really like him too. I wish, so like I was saying before, if you have sleepers, so I have Kyle Pitts, but to me, any rookies or any sleepers, you need to have more than one at that same position, and then you're hoping that one of them will hit. So that's what I wanted Logan Thomas, because then I knew between Thomas and Kyle Pitts, one of them is going to do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Switching over to the Jets as well, too. I'm not even going to talk about Zach Wilson. The only thing I would probably say about Zach Wilson, if you are in the keeper league or if you're in auction, just monitor him, see how well it does. The Jets have historically been bad. All right. They got Sam Darnold. He was terrible. He's now in Carolina. Zach Wilson, brand new coaching staff. Just pay attention to him. We're not going to spend some time talking about Zach Wilson. The one that, Jed, I'm going to talk with you as well, too. Michael Carter. Are you looking at Carter? If not Carter, are you drafting any other New York Jets running back?
Yeah, for me, not Carter. I have said historically there's teams I shy completely away from. The Jets have been one of those teams, but I broke that this season. As you guys know, I drafted Corey Davis because I do think he's had a nice preseason. We know him from before. I think at Tennessee right before had some pretty good production, and so as the pure number 1, and you know what, Zach Wilson has had a nice preseason, and so he's shown some accuracy, has a good arm, and so someone's got to catch the ball. And so in my mind, they're going to be losing a lot of games, so they're going to have to be throwing a lot. So I did this year go out and grab Corey Davis.
Yeah. Hey, another wide receiver for you to look, which, by the way, Corey Davis, if you guys are familiar with them, was over in Tennessee last year. He was your I think, number 5 draft pick of Cleveland Browns a number of years ago, went to Tennessee and really had a resurgence, and now he's with the New York Jets as well, too. Another person, Jim, I'm not sure if you're paying attention, is Elijah Moore, rookie in 2020. Moore had 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns through 8 games over at Ole Miss. Now, he's injured right now, but are you stashing Elijah Moore and paying attention to him?
I'm putting a star by his name in terms of the waiver wire, and I'm just going to keep an eye out on him because I do think that there's some value for him towards the end. But if I were to pick somebody, if I were to look at him versus like a Corey Davis or a Marvin Jones, I'll pick a Corey Davis and Marvin Jones before I'll pick an Elijah Moore.
Yeah. Couple other ones on your list with the Jets. Jamison Crowder, you're not picking up. Chris Herndon, tight end. You're desperate if you're picking up Chris Herndon. So those are ones that, unless you're a big league, you're not paying attention to as well, too. Last team over is the Dolphins over in the AFC East. Jim, I'm going to start with you. Tua, do you think Tua will hurt the offense, or will you think that he'll have substantial growth in his second year?
Actually, all reports have been recently that Tua's improving. And you know what? Like, I think during the summer, everyone was thinking, is Deshaun Watson going to come to Miami? And is that going to be the starter? Is Tua going to be able to hold up for this year? And actually, in the last few preseason games, he's actually done pretty well. So for me, I'm actually willing to take a risk on a Jalen Waddle and a Will Fuller for this year. And I think there's quite a bit of value because no one's really looking at them. I mean, Jalen Waddle was going towards the end of our auction draft. Will Fuller is the same way as well, too. So I actually would I don't know if I would draft Tua, but I would go after his receivers.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that of the receivers, people aren't talking about Devontae Parker, man. Devontae Parker is awesome. It's interesting how both Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, I guess you're looking for that higher ceiling. But to me, Devontae Parker is the guy that I'd want out of that group. He's a stud. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think you can attribute that to the quarterback play. And I agree, Tua seems to be getting better. My big concern with Tua is he doesn't throw the ball long. The deep ball, over 20-yard passes, that's where he really struggles. And that in the NFL, that's going to kill you. So he's got to show improvement in that deep ball. But I would expect just a natural progression. He will get a little bit better. And so if you want a sleeper on this team, to me, Devontae Parker's has got to go for.
Yeah.
Would you? What?
I would not draft to it. No.
No,
I don't think he's drafted. I mean, maybe as a QB2, but not as a QB1.
Okay, let me ask you. Would you, given all of the issues going on with Jamar Chase, would you draft a Jalen Waddle over a Jamar Chase right now?
No, I think the situation is too good in Cincinnati. I know everyone's been talking about Jamar Chase's drops. He's had 3 drops in each game he's played in. But no, I mean, the potential is still too high. And the offense in Cincinnati, look, it's Joe Burrow. People forgetting Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert were the same before Joe Burrow got hurt. In fact, Joe Burrow was ahead in yards right before he got hurt. So this guy is a stud. Once he gets a little bit more confidence in that knee, and that offense in Cincinnati, they're constantly they led the league. They were top 3 in passing attempts. And so in that division, they're going to have to throw a ton. So I think Jamar Chase is still the guy you'd want to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I would say about wide receivers, a lot of times is if you're in auction league, you could probably get Devontae Parker, like what Jed said, at a very cheap price. Also, in standard drafts, just wait until Devontae Parker. Everyone's going to be picking up Jalen Waddle. He's a sexier pick. People are intrigued by Will Fuller. Everyone's ignoring Devontae Parker as well too. Just so you know, also with Will Fuller, he is actually on suspension for the first 6 games of the season. So even if you pick him up, you won't be able to play him as well too. Jim, let me ask you a quick question. Myles Gaskin, talk to me about Myles Gaskin. Talk to me about Mike Gesicki.
I think Gesicki will do well. I think Myles Gaskin will be doing well. I think for me, outside of the Buffalo Bills, I usually try to stay away from AFC East teams, only because there are other teams that I like in terms of production and fantasy value. So I know some people really like Gaskin. He's not somebody I would target.
Yeah, I kept wanting Gesicki to really hit last year, and he had a couple good games, but then he would just drop off. He'd have some games where it was 1 point or 2 point. So you're looking for a little bit more consistency. It's funny that you said that about the AFC East, Jimmy. I think that's good that we're in 2 different locations because I feel like I avoid a lot of the West Coast teams, but the East Coast teams I feel like I know well. And so the Dolphins are a sneaky team. They have been right there with the Patriots for many years and just couldn't really get over the hump. I don't have a problem looking to pick up a Gesicki or a Myles Gaskin.
Hey, Jed, if you had a chance between Gesicki, Robert Tonyan, or Jonnu Smith, who are you looking at?
Honestly, probably still Jonnu Smith. I think the intriguing, potential in New England is there. Everyone remembers the 2 tight end system they had with Gronk and he who shall not be named. I think that's the potential. You're always playing for potential. When you're reaching towards the back, you want to play for the higher ceiling, in my opinion, because, you can get someone who's going to get you 9-10 points consistently, but that's not what you need to win.
Got it.
Aaron Rodgers, right? So for me, yeah, I like Jonnu Smith, but the potential of Aaron Rodgers to Tonyan is pretty high for me.
With that said, let's actually lead over to the NFC North because we want to make sure we cover the NFC North and then also talk a little bit about sleepers as well too. Aaron Rodgers, we've talked a lot about that. People love Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to overlook him this year. Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, you're probably going to draft in the first 2 rounds. They're always steady, all of that stuff. My question over to you, Jim, is A.J. Dillon. Are you concerned about Aaron Jones because of the presence of A.J. Dillon? And are you going to be drafting A.J. Dillon?
I like A.J. Dillon a lot. I mean, even in an auction league, I was surprised how many people actually liked A.J. Dillon as well, too. Part of it is I just think that with a keeper league, people are looking for good value towards the end of the draft, right? But I was also surprised how many people did their homework and went after A.J. Dillon. So, but in the 2 or 3 games that he played last year in place of Aaron Jones, he actually did really well. And from a dynasty perspective, he's one of those guys I would go after.
Yeah, to the point where they actually allowed Jamal Williams to go over to Detroit and sign a free agent contract over there. Hey, let me ask you. Oh, go ahead.
And Jamal Williams is actually not a bad player either.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about Jamal Williams in a little bit. Hey, Jed, let me ask you a question in terms of secondary receivers. Look, they've always been looking for a second receiver to break. Ever since the days of the Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams combination, we just have not seen it. Randall Cobb is now back. They've always keep sitting there. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is going to have a breakout season. Which one are you even looking at?
Honestly, I'm not. I think that other than the top 3, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers, I'm not looking beyond that. We talked about it, them hitting again, but again, it's just too. It reminds me a little bit of Pittsburgh. It's a guessing game trying to figure out who's going to break out with the wide receivers, and so I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it, right? You got the Valdes-Scantlings of the world, the Cobbs of the world, but sitting there will also be the Tyler Boyds of the world, the Marquise Callaways of the world. I'm going to go after those 2 all day before I pick up any of the Green Bay folks.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is if you're on a bye week, you hit a bye week, you lose someone, you're looking for a 1-week filler. These are the kind of wide receivers you can go for because a Scantling, he can have a 2-touchdown game pretty just out of nowhere. So someone you could pick up and swing for the fences.
Yeah.
All right, let's go over to the Vikings as well too. Jed, Jim, let me ask you, any of you guys interested in Kirk Cousins as a starting quarterback?
Not until he gets his vaccination. If he gets his vaccination, maybe, but if he doesn't, forget it. I'm serious. That to me is a deciding factor because to me, that's just crazy. Like he's going to get COVID at some point, and it's like you're going to lose games to them, and I don't want to be in that situation. So that's someone I'm staying away from.
Well, just as a reminder this year, so I was listening to the NFL policy. So if you are vaccinated, if you get COVID, once you get a negative test, you can come back, right? But if you're not vaccinated, you have 5 days after the mandatory 10 days to come back. But each of those 5 days, you have to be able to test negative right after that as well, too. So you're right from a fantasy perspective. If Kirk Cousins gets COVID and the likelihood of him getting it is pretty high, I mean, you've lost your quarterback right there, right? So
for at least 2 weeks, he can't come. Even if he's totally healthy, he can't come back for at least 2 games beyond that first game. And so, I think it's ridiculous. If I was Minnesota, I would get rid of the guy. I mean, he's not. Someone said this before. He's not good enough to put up with him not following this policy. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. In terms of Dalvin Cook, a lot of times. Jed, I know how much you love Dalvin Cook. There's no argument. He's probably either your first or second running back. If you had the number 1 drafting pick, give me an argument for why Dalvin Cook should be your number 1 player that you draft over Christian McCaffrey.
I would say just consistency and the scheme, the offensive scheme. This team is a running team, and they have shown time and time again they commit to it. They don't go away for it. His number of carries, he's always in the top 5 in the number of carries. And Cook is he's an elite back. Yes, he's not. They're not using him as much in the short passing game as they would like a McCaffrey. But as far as actual production at the run and at the goal line, Dalvin Cook is far and away, I think, the top back. The one thing I will say is don't sleep on Alexander Madison. This, other than, we just talked about I think Alexander, other than AJ Dillon, I think Alexander Madison is probably your number one handcuffed back.
Yeah.
So I just don't sleep on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dalvin Cook is such a rough running style. He will get injured at one point, and when you do, you got to pick up Alexander Madison because he's going to do really well. Jim, I'm looking at the clock as well too, and sensitive to Jed's time. Let me actually talk about Justin Jefferson. After Devontae Adams, would you pick up Justin Jefferson over Tyreek Hill, over a DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't know. I think after Devontae, right? I think the next group of receivers I would go after would be DeAndre, Stefan Diggs, Tyreek Hill. I think I would go after that group. Who's another guy I would go after? Oh, Calvin Ridley from the Falcons. For me, Calvin and also Justin Jefferson are somewhat the same. So out of that group, I think that would be Justin. I would pick them out of the third tier receivers. So, but I do think that he has a great ceiling, and I do think that again he'll do great this year in fantasy.
Yeah. A sleeper for you to look at tight end is Irv Smith. With the departure of Kyle Rudolph as the number one over to New York Giants, a lot of times people are predicting Irv Smith is someone that you could get in the later rounds, probably not even drafted at all. So pay attention and watch Irv Smith as well too. Hey, I'm going to go over to Detroit Lions, and then we're going to wrap up over the Chicago Bears. Jed, let me ask you, are there anyone besides DeAndre Swift, is there anyone you're interested over in Detroit?
Honestly, maybe Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson, we talked about him last season, had a few breakout games, but again, the inconsistency was there. Jared Goff is more of a dink and dunker, so I could see him maybe, using Hawkinson as a safety net, and so that's not a bad play. So I would say Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift are the only two, but I'm avoiding the wide receiver core and avoiding Goff as well.
Which, by the way, the wide receiver core is Brashad Perryman as well as Terrell Williams, who was formerly with the Las Vegas Raiders. People have been talking about St. John, but man, it's just with Jared Goff throwing it, it's not going to be very good. Go ahead.
I actually like St. Brown. I actually think he's a sleeper in a dynasty league. So I would not shy away from him. I'm not going to pick him up from a draft perspective, from a waiver perspective. Pay attention to St. Brown.
Yeah. Hey, for those, TJ Hawkinson, after the elite tier of wide receivers are gone, the Kelseys, the Kyle Pitts of the world, the George Kittles, TJ Hawkinson, in his second season, he was third amongst tight ends in receiving yards and PPR formats. And so you probably could get him fairly okay cheap, and as well as probably in the middle 6th or 7th round as well, too. With that said, let's go over and talk about the Chicago Bears. Jim, a lot of times all of us are from Chicago. Do you like Justin Fields? Is he someone that you're going to pick up on your dynasty? You're not going to start him right now, but are you picking him up and stashing him in your lineups?
Yeah, I mean, because I know that he's going to end up being the quarterback, whether it's the second game or the 6th game or the end of the season. He's going to be your quarterback, right? And so thus far, he's shown some pretty good potential. I do think that if when he becomes quarterback, though, what happens is the value of the Cole Kmets of the world, the Moonies of the world, the Allen Robinsons of the world, they're gonna increase, because right now I think they're just like, they're not a factor with Dalton at quarterback.
Yeah, I think Allen Robinson to me is being undervalued right now. Allen Robinson is a stud wide receiver, has not had consistent quarterback play. I'll even argue, even if Justin Fields doesn't start for a while, let's say we got Andy Dalton for 6 games before Justin Fields goes, I still think Allen Robinson, people are drafting him far too low. I was just trying to see, where is he going roughly? So he's going roughly the 11th or 12th.
Preseason games, he is not really good.
Yeah, let's just wait a little bit. But Allen Robinson is going as the 11th or 12th wide receiver. I think really he should be a top 10. So he's someone that I think he's undervalued right now.
Yeah.
Got it. Hey, in terms of running back, with David Montgomery, who had an outstanding season, Jed, Tariq Cohen, Damian Williams are now on the team. How high are you drafting David Montgomery?
Yeah, I like Montgomery. The issue is, again, we're talking about if Justin Fields is in, Fields takes a little bit of that rushing prowess. You got to assume that Fields will get a few touchdowns as well. So that's less for David Montgomery to have. So it drops, to me, it drops a little bit of his potential there, his potential for scoring. But again, you know what? Let me just see. Where is he going? So he's going around the 15th or 16th pick. So I think you have to be careful because right around there, you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson. Those are some pretty good names that it would be hard to pass up for David Montgomery. I might wait a little bit before picking him up, but he should be on someone's roster for sure. He should be an RB2 somewhere.
Got it. Hey, Jim, before you say anything, or go ahead, finish up.
I don't know if you guys saw the news. Did you know Helaire has an ankle sprain, and so they're monitoring him right now, right? So if you're looking at the Helaires, the Dobbins, the Montgomerys of the world, depending on what happens with that ankle sprain, may affect how you draft them. So for me, Dobbins shoots up, and potentially Montgomery actually increases in value depending on the Helaire.
That's a really good point. And Helaire actually, to me, was a big bounce back candidate this year. Mm-hmm. Everyone, a lot of people drafted him in the first round last year. And so now they just swore off him because he didn't produce at that level, but he hasn't dropped off that much. He shouldn't be down in the high teens. He really should be just outside of the top 10. So that's really something good to monitor, because if he's hurt, then all bets are off.
With that said, Jed, I know a lot of times you have a 9:00 meeting Central Time. Here's one thing I'm going to ask both of you guys to do. We didn't have time to do sleepers, and I want to talk about Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney. If you guys could do me a favor, record yourself, and we're going to put this on Instagram Live or Instagram for people to see. Give me your sleepers. Give me your top 3 or 4 sleepers. Also, give me your thoughts on Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet, and we'll put that on Instagram as well as Facebook for people to see. All right?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll see you guys on Friday.
All right. Bye.